Find out what's the general state of our country. What's the current situation? What must we do? Find out on The State of Affairs with Trevor Lindsay.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of State of Affairs. We are entering into the political realm on the next three series of our shows. Today we have OBA C10 candidate Robert King. Mr. King, welcome.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me on your show today.
My first question, basically, who is Robert King? Tell the people exactly who is Robert King.
Many people have said that they don't know who I am. And I've been quietly working behind the scenes as a probation officer, senior probation officer at the Department of Court Services for approximately 23 years. And I was responsible as part of a team for providing assessments to determine what the risk needs were of persons who had been placed on parole, probation, or for whom social inquiry reports were being written for. So the whole purpose of that was to help the clients unpick what the motivations were to commit certain types of offenses and to find appropriate means of addressing that. So I've been doing that for a number of years. Prior to that, I worked at Westgate as a caseworker, where you're assessing the incarcerated persons to determine what their needs were and keying them into programs. Prior to that, at Westgate in 1996 to 2001, I was a correctional officer. Prior to 1996, I was a correctional officer in young offenders facilities in Ontario and also youth offender behavioral programs before I came to Bermuda. So all told, about 30 years of experience working with this particular population, incredible population with a lot of potential that basically needed resources to get back on track.
Good stuff. Dr. King was one of the only, other than Martin Luther King, one of the only names I've known.
Rodney King.
You don't want to go there. But Dr. King is your uncle, you said, prior to us starting.
Uncle, that's right.
Tell me about your family lineage.
Family lineage. My father was Michael King, Howard Michael Walton King. He used to work at the Bank of Bermuda. He was a manager there. And he was also a senator under the former United Bermuda Party from 81 to 82. What struck me about my family's legacy, in particular with my father, is that I heard about the social activism that he was doing behind the scenes after he had passed years later.
Wow.
Because persons who knew that my father had passed would approach me and they would say, and even on the campaign trail, do you know what your father did for me and so many other people? And I said, no, I don't. He said, he gave me a mortgage when nobody else would.
Wow.
Which allowed me to provide a home for my family and to start my own business. And he said it was because of racist policies back then. He was, giving me the raw details, basically, because of racist policies as relates to lending, et cetera, for persons of color. My father helped a lot of people, Portuguese, Black Bermudians, persons who the system was failing. So that struck me. The other thing in terms of family lineage, my grandfather, Dr. V.O.D. King, well, my uncle, he was involved, he was former party chairman. Dr. V.O.D. King, my grandfather, was one of the first Black doctors on the island.
Wow.
With Dr. Gordon and that cohort.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, great-grandfather was Robert Crawford.
Okay. Wow.
So,
you got some...
So there's some lineage in terms of how it is that I end up here. It's in my DNA.
Yeah.
You don't realize it until you're intentionally working on the path. And what I realize is that all of my life experiences, and in particular my work experiences, has prepared me for this.
Good stuff.
It's not something that I feel that I've chosen.
C10, you are candidate for C10 for the OBA. Now, you're walking in some big shoes.
They are some big shoes.
Michael Dunkley, he's been a part of this constituency for years.
Yes.
Your thoughts on taking up the mantle after Michael Dunkley?
I recognize the work that Michael Dunkley has done. And I also recognize that the work for a community need not rest on one person, because if one person goes and you get somebody else that doesn't have the same enthusiasm, the community will suffer. I've always been a person of service for a specific population. Now, C10 is my family now. So it means that I've got to do the same things that Michael did in terms of getting to know each and every constituent as much as is humanly possible. And I've done that for the most part. I've moved from foothills all the way to Common Land Point Road, getting to understand what the people require to live a simple and good life with their neighbors. The thing that struck me as so incredible about C10 is it perfectly, to me, represents Bermuda in terms of colors, creeds, religions, abilities, artists. I mean, it's a melting pot of what is best about Bermuda, and
Black, white, Portuguese.
all of that.
Yeah.
All
yeah,
of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I met, like I said, I think in a piece that was in a newspaper, an artist, the person who won the Charmin Prize,
Okay.
met him. I also met the person who was responsible for ending the draft,
Larry Marshall.
Larry Marshall.
Yeah.
And he shared some things, you know, and in terms of the why, and I understood the why in terms of the overrepresentation of young Bermudians in the regiment, in terms of as opposed to being able to go overseas. So that was incredible to me. And then just hearing about the stories of what some of the complaints were, you know, the farm, Store Hill, the smells, but then you learned that there were other things going on there as well in terms of overflow during heavy rains. So getting to understand that there are so many issues, and you've got to find that delicate balance between business interest and neighbors' interest. The other thing too about safety and health, Bridal Hill. Their road was deemed unsafe back in August of last year. So that meant that it was unsafe for heavy vehicles, trash trucks, and emergency vehicles. The problem that was addressed just dealt with the trash trucks, but not the emergency vehicles. I also learned that from Store Hill all the way to, you know, the corners just before you get into flats. Dangerous spot. Many people have lost their lives. And yet nothing has been done about that.
What are the people saying? Those that doors should knock on. What are they saying? What are the number one issues that they are concerned about with Bermuda?
Number one issues they're concerned with are the high cost of living, the high cost of health care, the quality of life for their grandkids and children as relates to education, job opportunities. They also talked about the mass exodus of Bermudians leaving, which also meant that grandparents aren't able to be involved in their grandchildren's lives. And also, they now, although they love Bermuda, are also considering about leaving because so many of their family members have left. So that's local. From the guest worker population, what I'm hearing is that, okay, PRC, that's fine. I've been here for 20 years. My child is essentially stateless. That's a big issue. And there were spoke to personally about 50 families. And of those 50, they said they know 2 or 3 other families that are in exactly the same position because of the current laws as relates to immigration status, whether it be PRC and or eligibility for pathways to status.
If successful in this campaign.
When successful, I believe,
Okay,
I know it to be true.
Confident in that?
Well, that's been the response. I feel comfortable in terms of the work.
I'm going to stick with if. If successful.
Yes.
On the floor, how would you represent those individuals that have just gave you this concern, especially with immigration? Because my heart goes out to those people that have been here for 20, 25, 40 years.
Yeah.
And I've had friends that have to deal with this issue. And it's nothing worse than being here for so long and you don't have the documentation to say that this is your home. This is the only home you know. How would you deal with that on the floor?
It's a It would have to be a multifaceted and balanced approach because, on one hand, you want to make sure that by having guest workers here, albeit have been here for many years, that there is not going to be a negative impact on Bermudians, born, raised, etc. So it has to be balanced in terms of basic questions. Are they taking jobs away? Is their impact on the community 90% positive? Whatever the metrics are going to be, that we're going to all benefit from it, and the harm or the negative impact is going to be greatly reduced. So in terms of the matrices that's going to be used for that, I would have to, or the team would have to assess that to make sure it doesn't impact on housing, it doesn't impact on job opportunities, certain rules and regulations as relates to qualification. How many people are you going to be mentoring for certain positions in your company, et cetera? So it has to be a multifaceted and it has to be a fair approach to make that happen.
Yeah, but the issue lies with this individuals, there's guest workers, offsprings that have been here that were born here. And that seems to be an issue that needs to be fixed.
No, absolutely. The other thing too is the fact that we have guest workers, when we're looking at how Bermuda was started, we all came from different places.
That's right.
Came from St. Kitts. I mean,
That's right.
my family.
That's right.
My parents' origin, originally from Trinidad, from Jamaica, others from St. Kitts, et cetera, because of, our histories, our common history.
You got some from England, some from Scotland, some from Portugal.
No, absolutely. The other thing too is when we're looking at guest workers in Bermuda, and we also look at the types of employment that they're engaged in, that they've been given immigration work permits for. We're talking about when you go to a hotel, mostly you're seeing foreign workers in there. We know that it is a very difficult business to please people, in a service industry. That's just the way it is. That's one. And we also know that we used to have a Bermuda college, a hotel college, that trained people to the highest level and recognized that service is a profession and vocation. That was shut down and then the focus was on development and building hotels, et cetera. So educating our Bermudian children to fundamentally meet the needs of the community. Why is it that we've got so many work permit holders for nursing when there's obviously a need for it? So there has to be a connect between what the children are being taught in school and a clear pathway towards them getting the necessary skills and expertise to assume those positions.
There is data that states that there's a shortage of nurses worldwide.
That's right.
So we're all going to have that issue.
Yeah.
It's just something that it is. Ain't no right or wrong, it just is.
Right.
The Bermuda College, the hotel college, I should say, that used to be an avenue for Bermudians to enter into the job market.
And
do you agree that we should highlight more of getting Bermudians back into the hotel industry?
I think that for some,
it worked for us before.
It did. And the thing is, if we're talking about growing our tourism product and basically injecting what Bermuda culture was, I mean, I think we're around the same age, right?
Yeah.
So remembering what it was 70s, 80s, and 90s in terms of vibrant social life, nightlife scene, college weeks and all that, we were a center of excellence back then. We had Bermudians who knew and enjoyed the industry. When foreigners would come down, they could learn so much because they were talking to locals as opposed to
guest workers.
Yeah, so it adds a different flavor. So definitely, as part of the school curriculum, tourism, what it means, the job opportunities, et cetera, and also the trades. When you're looking at even, in your studio to be able to do this, why aren't more Bermudians being trained? Why aren't we being given the opportunities in terms of the trades? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you look at the United States, a functional education versus the typical university route, functional education in terms of IT-related things and computer-aided design, et cetera. That's where the trends are, as opposed to the strictly academic. And what we need to do is provide a workforce that meets the needs of the community and will evolve to meet the needs on a worldwide stage as well.
I'm glad you said trades. I'm glad you mentioned trades. What is your thoughts and your views on trades, of lack of trades for Bermudians that used to be a successful business opportunities for Bermudians? What's your thoughts?
I think I know it to be true that many of our children's experiences in school has been less than excellent. And what I mean that is many of them are graduating not knowing the basics of math and English. Many of them are graduating not being able to enter the Bermuda College. Different learning styles. We know that when we were younger. I know for myself, tearing apart a bike, putting it back together, saving, didn't have the money to go ahead and pay for somebody to go, but you actually enjoyed doing that. We need opportunities. Those Bermudian kids and other kids who are here need opportunities to learn the way they learn best according to their gifts and talents.
Mm-hmm.
Trades, when you get a plumber, a good plumber to work for you, $80 an hour. Now, if you want to talk about a living wage, that's a living well wage, especially you build up your clientele. The plumbers that I've hired and who my dad, with his old Bermuda mechanical shop, looked like Sanford and Son in there, were persons who were trained to a high standard, Robert Crawford days, and then tech school afterwards. Young Bermudian men and women can do the same thing, provided there's a clear path in school, primary school, middle school, high school, and beyond. That's all we need because kids are resilient. All they want to be able to do is have some opportunities, have the appropriate resources and the proper mentorship, and they can achieve in tremendous things.
What's your thoughts on the challenge of the young black man in Bermuda?
Well, from having worked with, like I said, the population at the formerly Department of Court Services, leaving school, not graduating, living in house, I'm talking about specifically them. So they need an opportunity to be able to make some money, but not a hustle job. Hustle job is not going to, it's temporary. But the other thing too is those persons who've been involved in the criminal justice system, those persons who end up at Westgate, for example, for, they're there for 2 years, et cetera, and or longer. The requirement essentially is that they have a job for 6 months when they get out. Persons who have been incarcerated for many years for more serious offenses, and appropriately so, are not receiving consistently programs related to having, securing vocational certification so that when they leave corrections, they're able to support their families. That's not the case. They'll get rehabilitation programs for offense specific. But when it comes to job programs, so that when they leave, they will be able to support themselves and do so sufficiently well so that they will be less likely to return to the same sorts of maladaptive behaviors and criminal behaviors because they have a means to level up the right way.
Well, stop. We're going to stop down for just a few minutes and we'll be back
Cool.
after this word.